Hello, I'm Andrew Pearce, and this is The Daily Show from the Daily Mail newsroom. Coming up, we'll be reflecting on the remarkable career of Nicholas Parsons, who sadly died at the grand old age of 96. We're going to tell you how you can go green in your washing machine without getting ill. Prince Andrew, the latest on him. Buckingham Palace say they can't speak for Prince Andrew about the latest in the Jeffrey Epstein saga. You have to talk to his lawyers. Guess what? They won't tell us who his lawyers are. The historian Mary Beard says all those lovely pictures of nudes were all about porn for the elite. Is she right? But first, Huawei. The cabinet has finally agreed the Chinese company can be used in the UK's 5G networks. So joining me now is Jennifer Arcuri, who is longtime friend and tech tutor of Boris Johnson, who's written an open letter in the Daily Mail today to Dominic Cummings saying, so you need misfits, oddballs, wildcards, super talented weirdos. Here's my CV. Which one of those are you then? An oddball, a wildcard, a weirdo, or all three, Jennifer?
I think you could put me in all three, although I'd say more of a wild card than anyone. And Assorted Minds is my kind of preferential title.
Yeah, okay. And I was struck when reading this article, you've been, you say, looking for misfits for your own cybersecurity company, Hacker House. You say, forget Eton and Harrow, you've been scouring the streets of London, pockets of Manchester, internet forums for disaffected hackers. They may not even need a GCSE or an A-level.
Yes, sir, that's correct. I've been doing this since 2014.
And is it working for you?
Well, yeah, in that in order to drive innovation in an otherwise very stale, industry, information security, which has always done things by the book in fear of what might happen if you were to venture out, I found a very strong disconnect between where industry was going and the people working for them. So back in 2014, I started running these Hack That nights where I would invite young men, mainly men, but young people from all over the country, between 18 and 23, who did not have a GCSE level necessarily or any kind of formal training, yet had all the skills that corporates were looking for and were able to basically hack their way out of a paper bag or any system on the planet just by raw talent. And so this is where I was quite inspired by these skills and started harnessing them for the purpose of building a commercial opportunity. It took me a while to get there, but then when we finally did launch a training portal and we realized how many there were out there, it made a lot of sense, actually, to be endorsing said skills because of their commercial value and what they could add to industry. I just believe that, putting up barriers to entry like crazy demands, having PhDs and all that, I mean, that doesn't make it a bad thing, but that shouldn't be the limitation in which to hire. And, even in the U.S., from the UK and the US, we see tremendous barriers of entry into cybersecurity because it is risky to hire people that don't otherwise have formal training, but it's then becomes a matter of skill. So if these people have skills, we should be harnessing those and not running from them.
And you say in your article too, I was very taken by this, as for the UK prepares for Brexit, Jennifer, that's happening on Friday. We're finally leaving the European Union. Hurrah for that, I say. You say it mustn't focus just on attracting the kind of experts who wear pinstripe suits. And you quote Boris himself, who once referred to these people as great supine protoplasma invertebrate jellies. Classic Boris Johnson language. What do you think? I mean, we take your article with a slight pinch of salt, of course, but what do you think you could have done or could do for the government if they brought in somebody with your approach to tech and business?
Well, for one, the people I work with are extremely talented, and we could be building solutions secure solutions faster and more innovatively than what we do when we work through a traditional corporate environment. For example, I am a firm believer that 5G should be manufactured in the UK. I think that we should be building our own hardware devices and testing them properly for security with full control from protocol to software to hardware. I think that the UK could really gain great value from these outside minds because they approach problems differently.
Now, if I could ask you just finally, we all read with great interest when you were here in your office in Shoreditch. You, Jennifer, had a pole dancing set up in there. Do you still have that in the States, or has that gone by the board now?
Well, I am a mother now, so it's not like I'm pole dancing. Pole dancing was something fun for core strength. I want to make that very clear.
Okay.
And there was nothing better to get people out of their shell after a few pints than to let them have a go on the pole. So it was really just a social, a fun thing, not necessarily a place to do a show.
All right. Well, that's Jennifer Arcuri, longtime friend and tech tutor Boris Johnson, written a fabulous article in the Mail today. Looking for oddballs to excite Boris? I'm your girl. So after the National Security Council met this morning, then the Cabinet met, and the agreement is that the Chinese firm will be allowed to be involved in the 5G network, but with restrictions. There was huge pressure from Donald Trump, the American president, to block the Chinese involvement. The Chinese will be banned from supplying kit to sensitive parts of the network known as the core. It would also be allowed to account for 35% of the kit in the network's periphery, which includes radio masts, and it will be excluded from areas near military bases and nuclear sites. So why and what was the fuss about the Chinese all about? Joining me now is Andrea Leadsom, who's the Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. The decision's finally been taken. It had been kicked into the long grass by Theresa May's cabinet. Are you confident this is the right one?
Yes, I mean, I think the key thing is we want to roll out 5G across the UK. It's got huge benefits for the whole population, certainly for businesses. And what we're doing today is announcing the final decisions of our telecom supply chain review, and we are setting out some specific criterion around high-risk vendors, and it's right that we should do that.
Why have you banned this company from sensitive sites if there is no threat to national security?
Well, what we're seeking to do is to look in the round at, first of all, not being overly reliant on any one vendor anyway, because if one vendor gets into difficulty or has a specific problem with its system and so on, then you can inadvertently lose connection, and you don't want to do that. So you don't want to be overexposed to anyone anyway for good economic reasons. Secondly, you do need to look very carefully at the potential for cyber activity that might be hostile to you. You also want to look very carefully at the laws in the home country of the vendor to make sure that there's nothing there that could be detrimental to the UK. So looking at all of those things in the round, what we have concluded is that where high-risk vendors are concerned, the cap of 35% and an exclusion from the core part, so the heart of the system, the sort of sensitive security elements of the system, they would be banned from. And not only that, but really importantly, this is all the result of a market failure, i.e. there aren't enough providers of the kit for the 5G rollout. So in setting that cap at 35%, we also expect simultaneously to work with providers to bring forward new market participants so that over time we can reduce that from 35% to something less.
You have upset the Americans, though, in all of this, and they are key allies, and you are hoping to strike a trade deal with the United States. We leave the European Union on Friday. Is it worth the standoff with the United States that this decision is going to cause?
Well, we have a very strong relationship with the United States that goes back for many, many years, and there's no doubt that they wanted us to do something different. But in the UK, we have had for over 10 years very, very close scrutiny of Huawei as a provider. We know more about their operations and their kits than any other country on earth. Our own intelligence services, who work very closely with the US services, have said that they don't believe that there is a significant risk to the United Kingdom. And this is a decision that we are taking for the UK in the full confidence of assurances from our own security services. And it doesn't impact on any of the collaboration that we have with the United States. None of the collaboration that we do in what's called the Five Eyes, which is our collaboration with the US and others, none of that takes place over these sort of open systems. So there's no question that there's any risks being taken here.
All right, and if I could just ask you finally, you were one of the most prominent campaigners in the cabinet for Brexit. We are finally leaving, hurrah, on Friday. Just to sum up Brexit for you, Andrea Leadsom, if you could, in 20 or 30 seconds.
Well, I just feel the future for the UK is so bright. You know, with or without being part of the EU, the innovation, science, technology, jobs, skills, levelling up around the UK, I'm so excited about it. And I'm just so relieved that we're finally leaving the EU.
Couldn't agree more. That's Andrea Leadsom, Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Now, the Prime Minister had faced pressure, as we were just referring to with Andrea Leadsom, from the US and some Conservative MPs to block the Chinese tech giant on the grounds of national security. One unnamed Trump administration official says the US is disappointed with the British cabinet's decision. Beijing had warned the UK there could be substantial repercussions, however, to other trade and investment plans had the company been banned outright. Well, for his take on the decision, I'm joined by Guy Walters, journalist and author. Guy, what's your view on this? Do you take a different view to Andrea Leadsom?
I do take a very different view to Ms. Leadsom. I think that this is a potentially disastrous and short-sighted decision. I think that communications are absolutely key to a nation's infrastructure. Now, we've known that for a very long time, even from the very old days of laying telegraphic cables across oceans in the 19th century. This is, I think, is a potentially very, very disastrous move.
But the Cabinet has been assured by the head of MI5 that the security risks can be managed. And you know from what Andrea Leadsom said, there is a failure of the market. There's nowhere else we can really get this 5G equipment made swiftly. And if we didn't go ahead with the Chinese, we'd have fallen by the wayside.
Well, there are two problems there. First of all, I think that there's been a lot of oversell of the rush to get 5G. Techie friends are saying, look, hold on a minute, 5G is not something we need overnight. This is something that can wait a couple of years, perhaps longer. I also think that Ms. Leadsom was also talking about the fact that we know Huawei technology very well. Now, what very few people realise is actually there is an organisation called the Huawei Cybersecurity Evaluation Centre Oversight Board. Okay, it's a bit of a mouthful. I think we can call it HCSEC. Now, that's based in Banbury in Oxfordshire, and that has been going for nearly 10 years in an arrangement in which the government has been monitoring Huawei. But get this, if you actually drill down, who owns this oversight board? It actually belongs to a company called Huawei Technologies UK Limited. Who owns that? Huawei Technologies in China. So the very oversight board is owned by Huawei, which I just find is absolutely extraordinary.
All right.
And so you turn around and look, hang on a minute, if we're that concerned that we've actually got an oversight board, well, why on earth are we giving them access to 5G?
OK, that's Guy Walters giving the alternative view on that decision on 5G. Now, remember to tell your smart speaker to play Daily Mail News, and you'll get the latest newsroom live from Mail Plus. And at 5, hear the latest Daily Show. Now, lawyers representing the alleged victims of the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, the paedophile, of course, Jeffrey Epstein, have urged Prince Andrew to cooperate with an inquiry into the financier. It comes after the prosecutor in charge of the US investigation said the Duke had provided zero cooperation.
The Southern District of New York and the FBI have contacted Prince Andrew's attorneys and requested to interview Prince Andrew. And to date, Prince Andrew has provided zero cooperation.
And yet, of course, Prince Andrew, in that disastrous interview with the BBC's Emily Maitlis last year, said this.
Would you be willing to testify or give a statement under oath if you were asked?
Well, I'm like everybody else, and I would have to take all the legal advice that there was before I was to do that sort of thing. But if push came to shove, the legal advice was to do so, then I would be duty-bound to do so.
Because you've said there are many unanswered questions,
Yep.
Everyone affected wants closure. You would help to provide that closure?
if in the right circumstances, yes, I would.
Well, joining me now is Anna Bradshaw, who's partner in the business crime team at Peters and Peters Solicitors. Anna Bradshaw, Prince Andrew is presumably acting on the advice of his lawyers, which is why he has not cooperated so far with the FBI.
That's my assumption. There are very good reasons why you may not choose to voluntarily cooperate with a foreign law enforcement authority if you have no legal obligation to do so or any legal obligation to answer questions. Then that also means that if you were to do so voluntarily, you wouldn't necessarily be able to avail yourself of the legal protections that exist, such as, for example, the right to not incriminate yourself.
Of course, we don't know if that attorney who was complaining about the lack of cooperation from Prince Andrew wants to speak to him as a witness or potentially as a suspect.
Well, exactly, and that distinction is not always one that is easy to draw, and it can change over time with the progress of an investigation. Someone who is initially viewed as a witness may well in time be viewed as a suspect.
Do you think, just finally, Anna Bradshaw, do you think he can sustain this position? Because although this may be the right decision legally, he is the son of the Queen. He's an incredibly public figure, and it will be doing enormous damage to the institution of the royal family if he's seen to be resisting cooperation, because people will say, won't they, no smoke without fire.
Well, that is a consideration, and although you shouldn't necessarily jump to the conclusion that just because someone refuses to cooperate voluntarily, they necessarily have something to hide. But here, of course, unlike many other scenarios, you have to factor in not only the legal position, but also the PR implications. And as some of the victims' lawyers are also alluding to, the moral dimension. But apart from those, it will for everyone in this situation, regardless of whether they are a royal or not, be a difficult decision to make.
OK, that's Anna Bradshaw. She's partner in the business crime team at Peters and Peters Solicitors. Just so people know, the Daily Mail, when they contacted Buckingham Palace about the statement by the prosecutors in America, they said, we can't answer for him because, of course, you know, he's no longer a working royal. Please speak to his lawyers. We asked who the lawyers were, and Buckingham Palace refused to say. That's going well, isn't it? Now, if you enjoy The Daily Show, please subscribe to us and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google or Spotify. And do get in touch by emailing me at dailyshow@mailplus.co.uk, or you follow us at mailplus_. Now, she's that wonderful classicist historian, isn't she, Mary Beard? Dame Mary Beard, no less. She claims some of those famous nude artworks actually risk being what she describes as soft porn for the elites. The TV historian says gallery visitors, she hopes, should reflect more on the origins of nude works of art and how the female body has been historically objectified for male pleasure. Well, joining me now is art historian Francesca Ramsey. Francesca, has Dame Mary got a point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I personally don't believe that fine art and soft porn per se, if we want to call it that, should be mutually exclusive. I mean, as soon as you put an image of a person, be it male or female, onto a canvas and you have someone looking at it, that person is objectified. So they become an object, and if they're beautiful, then, you know, people are going to react to that. But I certainly don't think that we can dismiss a lot of the Renaissance paintings as kind of just soft porn. As I said before, I think they can be both.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because the Royal Academy is clearly a bit twitchy about this, because I know in its 29 exhibition last year, you would have been there, I'm sure, the Renaissance Nude, it decided on a roughly half and half split of naked men and naked women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess we're trying to kind of update our perception of objectification to the modern day, which is all well and good, but we still need to remember that these paintings were painted for a Renaissance audience,
Yeah.
an audience in the past, and they're very different to the audience we have today. And I think because of a lot of what's going on with the Me Too movement and
Yes.
feminism having come into the limelight much more, it's very easy to forget that we also need to talk about the history of this work, and that's perfectly valid as a point,
Yeah.
without kind of saying that that's how we should behave today.
But I wonder if people would say the same about the nude males. Is that soft porn for the elite women?
Perhaps could be. Very often, but not spoken about, soft porn to the elite men. Certainly. But I do think that, these figures were painted to be beautiful as much as to be sexualized.
Well, I couldn't agree more. That's art historian Francesca Ramsey, who's written an article entitled Fine Art or Soft Porn. Now, coming up, is turning down your washing machine temperature making you ill? It's not in my house because I don't know how to turn it down. We have the guide to staying healthy and green, and we say a sombre farewell to a radio legend.
Welcome to Just a Minute.
That's Nicholas Parsons, who's died at the age of 96. What a grand old age. But first, it's time to find out what's on TV tonight with you-know-who, Claudia Connell.
Thanks, Andrew. Well, the National Television Awards are on telly tonight on ITV.
As it's our 25th birthday...
I wasn't even born when the NTA started.
There's a new host in charge.
I thought, yeah, that's exciting. I'd love to host a great big award ceremony, and there's nothing bigger than the NTAs.
These awards have been going for 25 years, and for the past 10 years, they've been presented by Dermot O'Leary. But he's not overseeing things tonight. It's going to be David Walliams, which I'm not sure about. We'll have to see how well he does. Phoebe Waller-Bridge has been cleaning up all the US award shows, so we'll see if she does the same tonight. Actually, we'll see if she turns up tonight. And also, will Anton Deck make it 19 wins on the trot in the Best Presenter category? There's also Winter Watch on BBC Two.
We've come to the car park at Lochgarten RSPB Reserve. We've come to do two things, really. To feed the birds, and as you can see, they're eating all my food but none of yours. See? We're also coming to show you a bird you've never seen before, which is a crested tit, a real Highland speciality.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! There he is. My first crested tit.
Season isn't a season until Chris Packham, Michaela Strachan and the team turn up on our TV screens. Tonight they're in the Cairngorms, which is one of the coldest places in the UK, and they're looking at the wildlife and the vegetation. Birds feature heavily tonight, but there's also an appearance from the rarely seen red squirrel. I mean, Spring Watch is probably the more popular of these shows, but this one is definitely worth a watch as well.
Well, thank you, Claudia. Now time for our regular city update with Ruth Sunderland, business editor at the Daily Mail. That man again, the Woodford saga.
That man,
Tell
Neil
me
Woodford.
more.
Well, what has happened today is that investors who were locked into his fund have learned to some degree the extent of the losses that they've made, and they are going to lose at least half on average typically of what they put in. Now, it's difficult to give a firm figure on that at this point because they haven't actually wound up the whole fund. So what they've done is they've sold off the bits that are easy to sell. So there's a bunch of assets left that are a bit harder to liquidate, and it's likely that on those assets the return might be even less. So the bottom line is you have lost out pretty heavily on Woodford, and if you compare it to what you would have got if you'd put it in another fund run by a different manager where it hadn't gone horribly wrong, you would have on average made about a 30% return in the past 5 years. So, it's not just what you've lost on the face of it, what you could have had.
And this is a lot of Daily Mail readers invested in Woodford's fund.
This is an awful lot of Daily Mail readers and some Daily Mail writers, fortunately not me, who were invested in Woodford's fund. And this is, people's savings, their dream cruises, their life savings, their daughter's weddings.
And he's laughing all the way to the bank.
He and his business partner have, since 2014, they've taken out about 113 million pounds in dividends. And, that is an astonishing amount of money to have extracted from a business that has collapsed.
Agreed. And the Daily Mail will continue to keep him on his toes, won't we? Or we'll try to.
Well, we most certainly will.
With Miss Sunderland in the leading the firing squad.
Absolutely.
That's Ruth Sunderland. Deputy Sports Editor Matt Gatwood's here with the latest, and my hero is still in the Australian Open.
Incredibly, yeah.
How did he do that, age 38?
Just incredible that he's been through another five-setter, as you say, at his age.
Roger Federer.
Roger Federer to set up now what will be a sensational match against Djokovic. Well, one hopes it'll be sensational, but Roger could be so knackered now after these two five-setters that actually he could be blown away. Obviously, could be a repeat of last year's Wimbledon final, which was such an epic, which was a five-setter. But whether Federer's got it in his legs to produce another performance after today, as you say,
seven
match points against the world, and albeit against the world number 100.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't watch.
But no, I mean it's amazing stuff, and he is an amazing player, and it's amazing he's still going. And this will be his 50th match against Djokovic. Do you want to know what the score is so far?
I think it's something like 20. I think Djokovic is about 3 ahead.
Very good.
How's that?
26-23.
Hey, look at that.
So, yeah, the 50th. So, Federer won the last one. So, if that gives you any hope, he might win the next one. But my money would be on Djokovic.
I'm still waiting for my exclusive interview, just me and him. Now, Arteta's safe for another day. He's the Arsenal manager.
He's the Arsenal manager. Arsenal did OK last night. They managed to beat Bournemouth, so they're through to the next round of the FA Cup. So, a little bit of breathing space for him.
Beat Bournemouth.
Well, you say that. You're right, actually. Bournemouth are having a shocking season, so it was the sort of performance they should have put in.
Yeah.
So a few kids played. Eddie and Nketiah scored, and Martinelli played really well. So there was some hope there for Arsenal. They played quite well last night.
Okay, and Jurgen Klopp causing a stir.
Well, this is the big story of the week. There's kind of Jurgen Klopp, obviously, the Liverpool manager, was involved in the FA Cup match against Shrewsbury at the weekend. They drew, and now their replay has been scheduled for when Liverpool's midwinter break is meant to be happening. So Jurgen has said, well, I'm not going to turn up. None of my first-team players are going to turn up. I'm not even going to go and manage the game. I'm going to leave it to the kids, and I'm going to leave it to the kids' coach to go there and do it. Now, obviously, a lot of people have come out today and said, well, that's disrespectful to the FA Cup. It's disrespectful to Shrewsbury not turning up for this game. OK, let the players go away on holiday if you want, but you could be there in the manager's seat. And he is sticking to his guns and saying, I don't want to be. It's meant to be a midwinter break. Why should I turn up as well? Point of principle, I'm not going to be there.
I don't agree with him.
I think he should be there as manager. I mean, he's paid a few quid. Yeah. So I think as manager, let the players go away and have the break. His legs are okay. He can still walk up the stairs.
Exactly.
I think it's a
PR blunder.
I think it's a PR blunder from him, and very rare that he makes them, because he's normally the smiley, happy-go-lucky guy, and he normally is very good at that sort of thing. But this one, I think, is a bit of an own goal, should we say?
All right, there. That's Deputy Sports Editor Matt Gatwood, ending with a good pun.
Thank you.
Now, whether it's reducing plastic bottle use or sticking on the laundry at a lower temperature, many of us have the best of green intentions. I think I do. But could this have consequences for our health? Because a study by the Journal of Applied and Environmental Microbiology suggests washing machines used at energy-efficient low temperatures could harbour harmful bacteria. Now, to explain all of this to me, because my head is swimming with this, is Lucy Elkins, good health writer on the Mail and a good friend of this programme. Lucy, what's it all about?
Well, this study started in Germany, as you said, and they were using domestic washing machines, and it was on a baby board, and they checked to see how many bacteria there were lurking in the laundry after they'd washed at 30 degrees.
Right.
And what they found was there was far more than you would imagine.
Oh.
We all put our washing machines on, don't we, and think that's it, nice hot wash, here we go, lovely clean pants, off we go.
Yeah.
But it would seem that's not the case, because what they found on these babies' clothes was that there were bacteria that could introduce skin infections and other quite nasty illnesses to them. So it would seem that the 30-degree wash is not warm enough to get off all those.
But what about my jumpers? If I do them on a 40 or a 60, they're going to shrink. I shrank one only last week.
Oh, no.
I did.
Well, you should have your woolen washed, and let's hope that there aren't too many nasty bacteria on your jumpers. The key here is what you're doing with those sensitive pieces of clothing that might harbour...
Your drawers.
Your drawers, exactly.
Yes.
And when it comes to your drawers, what we can learn from this, I think, is that we need to wash at warmer temperatures.
Yeah.
So chuck them in at 60 degrees, not 30.
Matt Gatwood's taking copious notes here because he's still here. So if you're doing your undies, we've got to do it on 60 degrees. Baz Bammenboy's just around, and he's fascinated by this. So this is really compelling stuff, Baz. This is Pulitzer Prize journalism, trust me.
And is it at 90?
Well, Baz, I'm going to ask why it needs to be that hot. But so it's quite important, this, isn't it?
It is, actually. And a lot of people now use reusable kitchen cleaners and things, towels.
Yeah.
And, the temptation temptation is to keep using them and then stick them in with everything else at 30 degrees. But this again applies to this. If you're washing around your loo or your bathroom and then you stick it in the washing machine at 30 degrees, the fact is that when you next use that cloth, you're just going to be wiping bacteria back around your bathroom or your kitchen, which isn't a terribly savoury idea.
She's a star, that Lucy Elkins, isn't she? Lucy Elkins, good health writer. Now I know all I need to know about me pants. Now, if you want to get in touch, email me at dailyshow@mailplus.co.uk or you follow us at mailplus_.
I'm sure you're right, Tony. So thank you. Give you the benefit of the doubt anyway. And 25 seconds, you tell us something about the French starting now.
Je pense que c'est très important de parler en français pour cette J'étais là il y a quelques années.
Well, he's not really speaking French. He's just mumbling, isn't he? So it's deviation.
I'm closest to him here, and he was actually speaking French words.
Was he?
Yes.
Well, the odd French word, but a lot of it wasn't.
Yeah, you can do the gibberish like quand je t'oublie son copain.
Yeah, well, that's not fair.
Oh my God, there's two of them.
The unmistakable tones of the great broadcaster Nicholas Parsons, who's died at the age of 96 after a short illness. His agent confirmed that Parsons had passed away today. He'd hosted Radio 4's Just a Minute since its inception in 1967. He presented his last programme in September last year. Radio 4's announced it will broadcast a tribute to him at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday. That's later today. Well, joining me now is, talking of legends, our own legend, Baz Bamyboy. Baz, he was a great, literally a broadcasting entertainment great.
He was a giant.
Yeah.
He was the giant. And you know what? I was just looking back at his credits, and his credits that stretch all the way back to the 40s.
Amazing.
He was a juvenile lead in Hay Fever for the BBC.
Was he really?
In 1946, 74 years ago.
And he did stand-up comedy as well at the Wyndham Theatre, didn't he?
Yep.
He did Sale of the Century. Do you remember that?
I do. Sale of the Century. Did
all the stuff that went on the conveyor belt. Amazing.
Indeed.
And I saw him, I think it was 17, 18 years ago, at Edinburgh Festival, one-man show, packed every night. He was already 80, Baz.
I know. You see, he was a consummate professional.
Yeah.
And he was the straight man. And he was the funniest guy because his timing was impeccable.
Yeah.
And that's the key to funny people, timing.
And just a minute, is it going to be the same without him?
No, but you've got someone like Paul Merton.
Yeah.
And Paul Merton, you know, studies the history of comedy.
Yeah.
And he was a student of Nicholas Parsons. So it will carry on.
You remember when the great Kenneth Williams was on Just a Minute, and they would spat for their attention, Parsons versus Williams. Parsons generally won.
He did, and the thing about, you know, people say to me, "Oh, wasn't he the nicest guy?" And he was. But that niceness belied a steeliness. Why do you think his career lasted so long?
Well, as you say, he was a child star, so 70, 80 years.
Yeah.
Is there going to ever be another like him?
No one. And, you know, my son was ill when he was a kid, sort of a few years ago, and he stayed up all night watching Nicholas Parsons in the Carry On films and the Arthur Haynes TV series. I said, how did you find those? He said, Dad, you're too old to know how to get anything. Yeah. And he's right. He found all this comic gold. Nicholas Parsons, I ask you, a legend.
And for your favourite, was Just a Minute your favourite with him, or was it?
Yeah. I always made sure. Even when I'm abroad, I love BBC Sounds because you can pick it up. You see, when you're travelling.
He was the first celebrity I ever interviewed on the Gloucestershire Echo. I was so nervous.
Oh.
And he was so nice, as you said. He was so nice. That's the legendary Baz Bamyboy talking about the legendary Nicholas Parsons. Well, that's all we've got time for today. For the latest from the Daily Mail News, we come back every day for briefings at 7 a.m, 12 noon, and of course 5 p.m, where you can listen to me all over again. That's all from me, Andrew Pearce, from The Daily Show. I'll be back tomorrow. Have yourselves a great evening and good night.